In the quiet edge of night, when the world feels softer and more distant, she invites the listener to step gently into a medieval home, not as a tourist, not as a judge, but as a calm witness. Before anything else, she wonders, where are you listening from? And what time is it there right now? Somewhere beyond a wooden door, a fire still breathes. A roof of thatch holds the dark at bay, and the air inside carries the memory of every meal, every winter, every body, every animal, every ordinary day. Tonight, the story will not rush. It will move slowly, like a hand across old wood, like smoke drifting under rafters, like a familiar scent settling into cloth. And the first thing she will let you notice is not what you see, but what you breathe. The door is rough beneath her palm, swollen slightly from damp weather, and it yields with a tired groan as she pushes it inward. Cold air slips behind her like a shy animal, trying to follow her inside, but the warmth immediately pushes back. The warmth is not clean, not empty. It is full. It holds weight. It presses against the face and the throat in a way that tells the truth before the eyes have even adjusted. The first breath inside is smokewood smoke that has lived here so long it feels less like an event and more like a permanent element, like the walls, like the floor. It is the kind of smoke that does not simply vanish. It settles. It clings. It has turned the underside of the thatch dark, and it has left its signature on every beam and every blanket. In that smoke she can taste a faint bitterness, and under it a deeper note, fat, broth, the last echo of something cooked earlier over the hearth. Even when the pot is empty, the air remembers what it once carried. She takes another step, and the floor answers back, soft with straw and crushed rushes under packed earth. The rushes release an old, sleepy scent as they break dry stems, dust, faint herbs that were once sweet and green months ago. There is a trace of something floral, almost ghost-like, as if someone once hoped a handful of lavender might persuade the room to forget the harder smells. But the room does not forget, it only layers. Near the doorway, the outside world still lingers on her boots. Wet soil, the sharp mineral scent of mud, a hint of manure from the yard where life is kept close and practical. Yet inside, that sharp outdoor smell is quickly absorbed into the thicker indoor air. The cottage does not allow anything to stay separate. Everything becomes part of it. She pauses, and in the dimness she becomes aware of the human presence, not through voices, but through scent. Wool warmed by bodies, linen that has been rinsed and dried, but not truly stripped of its history, skin that has laboured, sweat that has dried, breath that carries the memory of onions, ale, broth. These are not dramatic scents. They are intimate, ordinary, continuous, so constant that those who live here no longer smell them as something distinct. They live inside them the way a fish lives inside water. And then, faintly, behind it all, she notices the animals not as separate creatures, but as warmth and odour woven into the household. A gentle, musky, living undertone. Hay chewed slowly, damp straw, the sweet sour breath of a cow, the faint sharpness where urine has soaked into bedding. Not far away, feathers rustle softly, and a dry, acrid note rises and disappears again, like a sentence half spoken. This is what the house is made of, as much as it is made of timber and clay. The scent of fire, the scent of bodies, the scent of animals, the scent of damp earth. And none of it is accidental. Each smell is tied to survival. Each one has a reason. She walks toward the hearth, because every medieval home is arranged around that one center, the place where heat is born, where food becomes safe, where darkness is held at a distance. And as she moves, she understands something important. If you want to know what these homes smelled like, you cannot treat the scent as a joke or a list. You have to treat it as a language. The smell speaks of what people ate, what they feared, how they washed, how they slept, how they kept animals near, how they endured winter. The smell is not decoration, it is evidence. She settles closer to the fire, letting the warmth soften the cold in her hands, and she begins, slowly, to let the listener breathe the room the way its own people do, without flinching, without rushing to escape it, and without pretending it was ever meant to be clean in the modern sense. In this place, clean means something else. It means warm, it means working, it means alive. She remains by the hearth for a long moment, not because there is something specific to do there, but because this is where the house reveals itself most honestly. The fire is not roaring. It rarely does. It lives in a steady, practical state, glowing and breathing rather than blazing. From time to time, a small crack escapes as resin trapped in the wood gives way, and with it comes a brief intensification of scent-sharp pine, old oak, and something faintly sweet where sap once was. The air around the hearth is thicker than elsewhere in the room. It presses gently against the skin, warmed by hours of burning and reburning. The smoke does not rise cleanly upward. It wanders, it hesitates. It curls along the beams, as if undecided about leaving, and so it stays, sinking into wood, fabric, hair, and lungs alike. She notices how the smoke changes depending on where she stands. Close to the fire, it smells alive, active, almost nourishing, like a kitchen at work. Further back in the room, it becomes duller, older, more settled, like smoke that has already told its story and is now only a residue. It is this older smoke that gives medieval homes their unmistakable character. It is not the smell of a fire burning now, but the smell of fires that have burned here for years, even decades. The walls carry it. When she brushes her fingers lightly along the clay daub, they come away dry and dusty, and the faint scent of smoke rises from the surface, as if disturbed from sleep. The beams above her head are darker than the wood should naturally be, stained by generations of soot. If she were to scrape one with her fingernail, black powder would fall, and the smell would briefly sharpen again. She becomes aware that the smoke is not merely tolerated, it is useful. It keeps insects away. It preserves meat hanging in the rafters. It dries damp clothing when nothing else can. It discourages mold, even as it contributes to it in other ways. The smoke is a tool, as essential as the knife or the pot, and the smell it leaves behind is simply the price of survival. As the fire settles, other smells move forward to fill the space it momentarily releases. The most immediate is the scent of the floor. The packed earth beneath the rushes is not inert. It breathes slowly, releasing the memory of moisture, of spilled ale, of water sloshed from basins and absorbed over time. In winter, when the ground outside freezes, the floor smells drier, dustier. In spring, it turns heavier, carrying a faint sweetness of rot as thawed earth wakes again. Tonight, it smells neutral but present, like soil held indoors too long. She shifts her weight, and the rushes respond with a soft sigh. They were once cut fresh and green, chosen deliberately not just to soften the floor but to scent the space. Over time, their perfume has faded, but traces remain something grassy, something faintly medicinal. Mixed into them are crumbs of bread, grains of barley, and tiny fragments of bone worn smooth by feet. These things have no sharp odour of their own anymore. They have become part of the floor, part of the house's slow digestion of daily life. From where she stands, she can smell the table. It sounds strange to think of furniture as something with a scent, but here it is undeniable. The wooden surface has absorbed years of use, spilled broth, grease from meat, ale sloshed from cups, hands wiped absent-mindedly on its edge. The table smells faintly sour and fatty, especially near the places where people sit most often. It is the smell of meals that did not quite disappear. The bench beside it carries a similar story. Wool skirts and tunics have rubbed against it day after day, transferring sweat, lanolin, smoke. The bench smells of people even when no one is sitting there. She moves slowly through the room, letting each area speak in turn. Near the storage chest, the air changes again. The chest holds clothing, spare linens, and small personal items. When its lid is opened, a pocket of trapped scent escapes stale wool, dried herbs tucked between folds, and the unmistakable human smell of garments worn many times before washing. There is no sharpness here, no shock. The smell is muted, familiar, almost soft, like breath held in fabric. The linens inside the chest have been washed, but washing in this world does not erase scent the way modern washing does. They were soaked, scrubbed, rinsed, and dried, perhaps with the help of ash or urine to break down grease. The result is cleanliness of function, not of emptiness. The cloth smells clean in the medieval sense, free of visible filth. Safe to wear, but it still carries a faint ammoniac tang under the wool and smoke. It is a quiet reminder of the methods used. She closes the chest gently, and the room absorbs the escaped scent back into itself. Now her attention drifts toward the people themselves, not as individuals, but as sources of warmth and smell that shape the space continuously. The father's presence is marked not by sound, but by a deep, grounded odour, sweat that has dried and warmed again, earth worked into skin, leather that has absorbed weather and labour. His smell is heavier than the others, broader, carrying the field with him into the house. The mother's scent is different. It moves more subtly through the room, lighter but persistent. There is warmth there too, but also the faint bitterness of herbs used for washing, the quiet sourness of milk, the steady smell of wool and flour. Her hands, when she passes, leave behind the scent of bread, dough, and ash, a combination that defines the rhythm of her days. The children add brightness to the olfactory landscape, even without meaning to. Their smells are less layered, less settled. They carry dust and straw, the sharp green of crushed leaves, the faint tang of sweat that has not yet learned to linger. Their hair smells of smoke simply because everything does, but underneath it there is still a freshness, fleeting and unmistakable. As evening deepens, the house grows quieter, and the balance of smells shifts again. Cooking scents fade into memory, leaving behind only their echoes in the air. What remains is the baseline, the true smell of the home, when nothing is actively happening. This is when the house smells most like itself. The fire dims, and with it the sharpness of smoke softens. The air grows heavier, more still. Without movement, Scents settle into layers rather than circulating. The smell of animals becomes more noticeable now, not suddenly stronger, but no longer overshadowed. From the byre corner comes the steady, warm scent of living bodies. Hay, damp straw, animal breath. There is a sweetness to it, not unlike warm bread left too long in a closed cupboard. Under that sweetness lies the sharper note of waste, present but controlled, absorbed by straw and ash. It is not fresh. It is old enough to have lost its edge. The animal's presence changes the temperature of the room subtly, and temperature affects smell. Warmth releases odor. Cold traps it. Here, the warmth of bodies and embers allows everything to breathe a little. The air feels thick, almost velvety, as if it has substance. She notices, perhaps for the first time, how quiet it all is. There is no humming of machines, no distant engines. Sound does not compete with scent here. Without distraction, the nose becomes more attentive, more patient. It does not jump from one stimulus to another. It rests. This is how people live with these smells, not by enduring them actively, but by letting them fade into the background of awareness. The house does not smell bad or good to those within it. It simply smells right. It smells as it should. The night deepens, and with it comes another subtle change. The scent of the chamber pot, faint earlier, becomes more present. Not overwhelming, not offensive, but noticeable. It sits in the corner like a quiet fact. Its ammonia edge softened by ash and distance. It is part of the agreement of night. Safety in exchange for tolerance. No one reacts to it. No one comments. The smell does not signal danger, so it is ignored. She understands now that medieval homes did not smell one way all the time. They shifted constantly, responding to fire, weather, bodies, animals, and routine. Smell was not static. It was a living system, and this system taught people how to live. They learned when something was wrong because the smell changed. Milk souring, meat turning, smoke thickening dangerously, dampness creeping too far, illness announcing itself in breath and sweat. In a world without instruments or sensors, the nose was an early warning system. So the house trained its inhabitants, slowly and relentlessly, to pay attention without panic, to notice without judgment. She breathes in again, deeply, and lets the air settle inside her chest. It is warm, it is heavy, it is familiar now. This is only the beginning. The fire does not announce itself loudly. It never has. It lives at the center of the house the way a heartbeat lives inside a body, steady, repetitive, unnoticed, until something goes wrong. The smell it creates is not dramatic in a single moment, but cumulative, built layer by layer, over years of burning. She sits closer now, close enough to feel the uneven warmth against her shins. The stones around the hearth have absorbed so much heat over time that they release it slowly, even when the flames are low. When she leans near them, the stones smell faintly mineral and dry, as if the earth itself has been baked and hollowed out by fire. There is a subtle tang to it, something like dust warmed too long in the sun. The smoke here is different from smoke outdoors. It is not sharp, like a sudden fire in open air. It is softened by repetition, by enclosure. It has been filtered again and again through wood, fabric, lungs. It carries traces of everything it has ever touched. Meat, fat, damp, wool, resin, herbs thrown on the fire in small, hopeful gestures. It is not a single smell, but a memory of many. When the fire is fed, the smell changes immediately. A fresh log added to the embers releases a brighter note, almost sweet, especially if it is pine or birch. For a moment, the air feels cleaner, sharper, alive with movement. Then the sweetness fades, replaced by the deeper, darker scent of charring wood. If the log is not fully dry, a faint sourness joins in, a reminder of moisture trapped inside. She notices how the people tend the fire with care, not just for warmth, but for smell. Too much green wood, and the smoke becomes thick and bitter, stinging the eyes and throat. Too little fire, and dampness creeps back in, bringing with it the smell of mold and rot. The right balance is learned over a lifetime, adjusted instinctively. The mother knows when to stir the embers, when to add fuel, when to let the fire rest. She does it without looking directly, guided by smell as much as sight. A sudden change in odor tells her something is wrong long before smoke becomes visible. This is why the smell of smoke in a medieval home is not simply tolerated, it is trusted. As the fire burns, it touches everything indirectly. Clothing hung nearby absorbs it deeply. Wool takes it in and holds it, turning smoke into something almost comforting. Linen carries it more lightly, letting it fade faster, but never fully disappear. Hair traps it too, especially when loose. After a while, everyone smells faintly of the hearth, even when they step outside. This shared scent creates a strange equality. Inside the house, everyone smells somewhat the same. Individual differences blur. Status is less obvious by smell alone. The fire makes them all part of the same atmosphere. She realizes that this is one reason why medieval people did not associate smoke with dirt. Smoke was not failure. It was evidence of life continuing. A house without smoke was cold, abandoned, or dead. The ceiling above her tells this story silently. The thatch is darkened, its original straw colour lost long ago. When warm air rises, it carries smoke particles with it, embedding them deeper into the roof. Over time, this layer becomes protective. It repels insects. It preserves the structure. The smell that comes from it dry, faintly sweet, slightly acrid, is the smell of a roof that has done its job well. She looks at the small opening where smoke sometimes escapes. It is imperfect, unreliable. On still nights, the smoke lingers. On windy nights, it pulls upward more eagerly, briefly clearing the air. People know this and plan accordingly. Doors are opened at certain times. Fires are banked differently depending on the weather. Smell guides these decisions. As the evening continues, she notices how the smoke settles into her own breathing. At first, it was noticeable. Now, it barely registers unless she concentrates. Her nose has begun to adjust, filtering it out as background. This adaptation happens faster than expected. She understands now how medieval people could live entire lives in this environment without complaint. The smell is constant, so the mind stops treating it as information. Instead, it listens for change. A sudden sharpness would mean danger. A sweetness turning sour would mean food spoiling. A damp heaviness would warn of rot or sickness. The baseline smoke, sweat, animal warmth is simply home. She moves away from the hearth and sits near the sleeping area, where the smell changes again. Here, smoke is less dominant. Human presence takes over. The bedding smells of straw and wool, compressed and warmed by bodies, night after night. Straw, when fresh, smells green and dry. When used, it becomes something else earthy, slightly sour, faintly sweet. It breaks down slowly, absorbing sweat and moisture, releasing it again when disturbed. When someone lies down, the smell deepens. Heat wakes it. The bedding breathes. Wool blankets carry their own quiet scent, even when clean. Lanolin lingers, especially when warmed. It smells faintly animal, faintly oily, like sheep remembered through fabric. Combined with smoke, it becomes something rich and heavy, oddly calming. She lies back briefly, not to sleep, but to understand. From this position, the smell of bodies is strongest. It is not unpleasant. It is intimate. It smells of breath, of skin, of digestion. It is the smell of people sharing space closely, without barriers. In modern terms, it might be called stale. Here, it is simply human. The chamber pot's presence is clearer from this angle too. Its smell is contained but undeniable. It does not dominate unless one focuses on it. Ash has softened it, distance has dulled it, habit has rendered it nearly invisible. She notices how the household smells differently at night. Without movement, without doors opening, everything becomes denser. The air thickens slowly, almost imperceptibly. By morning, the difference will be obvious. But now, it is only beginning. Outside, the world smells different, cold, empty, sharp. Inside, the house smells full. This fullness is the point. The medieval home is not meant to smell neutral. Neutrality is not a goal. The goal is endurance, warmth, continuity. Every smell inside this house tells a story of something being done. Fire burned, food cooked, bodies worked, animals kept close, waste managed, damp fought, night survived. She breathes again, slower now. The house does not apologize for its scent. It simply exists, and tomorrow it will smell slightly different. The human body is never silent in a medieval home. Even when no one speaks, even when no one moves, the body continues to announce itself through scent. It is constant, quiet, and deeply woven into the atmosphere of the house. She becomes aware of it most clearly when someone passes close by. Not abruptly, not offensively, just a gentle shift in the air. Warmth moves. Scent follows. Skin that has worked all day releases what it has held. Sweat dries, then warms again. It smells faintly salty, faintly sour, not sharp enough to repel, not sweet enough to please. It simply exists. The smell carries information. Effort, heat, movement. It is the smell of muscles used and rested. The father's body tells its story without words. His scent is layered sweat over soil, leather over skin, smoke over everything. When he sits near the fire, his clothes warm and release what they have absorbed throughout the day. The smell deepens, spreads outward, then settles again. It does not change suddenly. It unfolds slowly, the way dusk unfolds. His tunic has been worn many times since its last washing. It was rinsed, scrubbed, wrung out, and dried in open air, but not stripped of itself. Washing here removes danger, not history. The cloth still carries his shape, his work, his presence. When it warms, it remembers. She realizes that in this world, clothing is not a barrier between body and air. It is a bridge. Linen shirts absorb sweat readily, holding it close until heat releases it again. Wool behaves differently. It traps warmth and moisture, allowing scent to build gradually, then releasing it slowly. This is why wool smells strongest near fire or in sleep. It does not shout, it waits. The mother's body carries a different rhythm. Her scent moves with her, lighter but persistent. There is warmth there too, but also repetition, the daily cycle of cooking, cleaning, tending, feeding. Flour dust clings to her skin. Ash lingers on her hands. Milk leaves a faint sweetness that does not fully disappear. When she washes, she does so carefully, deliberately. Water is precious. Soap is not wasted. Instead, she focuses on the parts of the body that matter most. Hands, face, underarms. These are washed daily, sometimes twice. Cleanliness here is selective and practical. The water she uses is often warmed slightly, not hot, not luxurious. Sometimes herbs are added, not to impress, but to soothe, to refresh, to help the body reset. Mint, sage, lavender. Their scent lingers briefly on the skin, a small moment of brightness in a world of heavier smells. This is not vanity, it is maintenance. She notices that after washing, the mother smells different, but not neutral. The herbal sharpness fades quickly, replaced again by the familiar human warmth. Cleanliness does not erase smell. It reshapes it. The children smell of motion. They are less careful, less layered. Their sweat has not yet learned to linger. Their skin releases scent quickly and loses it just as fast. When they come in from outside, they bring the world with them. Grass, dust, animal fur, damp earth. The house absorbs these smells without resistance. No one scolds them for it. This is expected. Children smell like where they have been. As evening settles, bodies relax, and with relaxation comes release. Muscles loosen, breath deepens. The smell of exertion softens into the smell of rest. Sweat no longer smells sharp. It smells warm, contained. The house responds to this change. The air grows heavier, not because it is dirtier, but because it is fuller. She notices something subtle now. Fear has a smell too, but it is absent here. Fear sharpens scent, turns sweat acrid. Tonight there is no fear. There is only routine. Bodies here are not deodorized. They are not masked. They are accepted. She understands that in a medieval home, the human smell is not a problem to be solved. It is a condition to be managed, read, and understood. A sudden change in body smell would mean illness. A sweetness in breath might signal fever. A sharpness in sweat could mean panic or pain. The nose is trained to notice these things. As people prepare for sleep, clothing is loosened, sometimes removed. Wool tunics are hung nearby, releasing a deeper wave of scent as trapped warmth escapes. The air responds slowly, thickening just a little more. She watches as bedding is arranged. Straw is fluffed, blankets shaken. Each movement sends up a small cloud of smell dust, dried sweat, old warmth. It is not dramatic, it is constant. When someone lies down, the smell intensifies, briefly, then settles. Body heat activates what has been stored in fabric and straw. Over time, it becomes uniform. She lies down as well, not to sleep, but to observe. From this position, Scent comes from all directions. Above her, wool and thatch. Beside her, human warmth. From the hearth, a low, steady smokiness. From the animals, a soft, rhythmic musk. Nothing competes. Everything blends. She realizes that modern ideas of privacy do not apply here. Smell ignores boundaries. Everyone shares the same air. Everyone contributes. And because of that, smell becomes communal. No one smells alone. As the night deepens, breath becomes the dominant movement. Each inhalation pulls scent inward. Each exhalation returns it slightly changed. The room breathes with its inhabitants. Over hours, the air grows warmer, heavier, more saturated. By morning, it will be noticeably different, but no one will comment on it. They will simply open the door, let fresh air in, and begin again. She closes her eyes briefly and notices that her own body has already begun to change. Her clothes smell faintly of smoke. Her hair has absorbed the room. Her skin carries warmth that was not hers alone. She has been marked. This is how medieval homes claim those who stay within them, not through sight, not through sound, but through scent. The body adapts quickly. Judgment fades. Sensitivity sharpens where it matters and dulls where it does not. This is not neglect. It is intelligence. The house does not smell clean. It smells known. Night changes the meaning of smell. When darkness settles fully and the door is barred, the house becomes a closed vessel. The outside world retreats, and everything that remains is held inside warmth, breath, smoke, bodies, and waste. Nothing escapes easily now. The air no longer moves freely. It listens. She notices this first, not with discomfort, but with awareness. The house smells quieter at night, but also denser. Without footsteps, without cooking, without the door opening and closing, the air stops being refreshed. It thickens slowly, the way water does when left undisturbed. This is when the smell of human waste becomes most present, not sudden, not violent, but persistent. The chamber pot sits where it must, usually in a corner, sometimes behind a stool or cloth. It is not hidden because it is shameful. It is placed where it is practical. The smell that comes from it is sharp at the edges, softened in the center. Urine carries ammonia, but ash dulls it. Distance dulls it. Habit dulls it most of all. She understands that the pot is not merely tolerated, it is trusted. At night, going outside is dangerous. Cold, animals, uneven ground, unseen threats. The smell inside is preferable to the risks beyond the door. This is the exchange the house offers. Smell in return for safety. The people accept it without drama. They do not wrinkle their noses unless something changes. Freshness matters more than existence. A sudden spike in odor would draw attention. A steady presence fades into the background. She notices how the mother covers the contents with ash earlier, not as a gesture of disgust, but of management. Ash absorbs moisture. Ash absorbs smell. Ash is part of the system. This system is quiet and efficient. Waste is contained overnight, removed in the morning. The house breathes easier with dawn. The cycle repeats. In the stillness, she becomes aware of other nocturnal smells. Breath, for one. Human breath smells different at night. Warmer, heavier, sometimes faintly sour. It carries traces of what was eaten, of digestion continuing in the dark. The children's breath smells soft and sweet, especially if they were nursed or fed milk before sleep. Adults' breath is deeper, more complex. Ale leaves its mark. Onions linger. These smells are intimate, shared, unnoticed. Occasionally, a sleeper turns, and wool shifts. The smell of the bedding rises briefly, then settles again. Straw sighs softly beneath weight, releasing a muted earthiness. The animals respond to night differently. Their smells become steadier, less variable. They are resting now, conserving heat. The cow's breath is slow and warm. It smells of hay and cud, faintly sweet, faintly sour. The goat's odour is sharper, more animal, but constant. These smells are reassuring. They indicate presence, life. Silence amplifies scent. Without sound to distract, the nose notices patterns. She realizes that the house smells safest at night, despite or because of everything it holds inside. Fear smells sharp. Panic smells sharp. Neither is present. Instead, there is routine. She lies still, letting the air settle around her. Her own breathing joins the rhythm. She no longer distinguishes between her scent and the room's. They have blended. In this moment, she understands something essential. Medieval people did not experience these smells as an assault. They experienced them as information. A house that smelled like this was inhabited, warm, watched. A house without smell was empty, cold, or dead. Outside, danger smells different. Wet fur, open rot, unfamiliar air. Inside, the smell is known. This knowledge allows sleep. As the night deepens, the fire sinks further into embers. Smoke thins, but never disappears. It lingers as a memory in fabric and wood. The air cools slightly, tightening scent rather than releasing it. The room becomes almost still. She notices that time feels different here. Smell stretches it. Without clocks, without light, scent becomes one of the few markers of passing hours. The air grows heavier, then lighter again, near dawn. At some point in the night, someone stirs, uses the chamber pot, settles again. The smell shifts briefly, then returns to baseline. No one wakes fully. No one speaks. The system holds. She understands now why medieval homes could feel comforting to those who lived within them, despite everything modern minds recoil from. The smells were not chaos. They were structure. Each scent had a place. Each had a reason. The house does not overwhelm the senses. It trains them. As she drifts toward sleep herself, she realizes that her own judgment has changed. What once might have seemed unbearable now feels simply present, neutral, even gentle. This is adaptation. This is survival. The house does not smell the same all year. This is something learned slowly, not taught. It is understood through repetition, through living long enough to notice that the same walls, the same floor, the same fire can hold entirely different atmospheres depending on the season. In winter, smell contracts. Cold tightens everything. The door stays closed longer. The window opens rarely. Smoke becomes heavier, more dominant, because the fire is never allowed to die. It burns day and night, sometimes weak, sometimes stronger, but always present. In winter, the house smells of survival. The smoke deepens, losing its sharpness and becoming almost sweet with age. It settles into wool and straw so completely that even when a garment is taken outside, the smell follows. Breath fogs the air briefly before vanishing, leaving behind warmth and scent. Bodies smell stronger in winter, not because they are dirtier, but because they are enclosed. Sweat has nowhere to go. Clothing dries slowly. Dampness lingers. The animals are brought closer. Their warmth is needed, and with it comes their smell. Manure freezes outdoors, but indoors the scent remains alive. Softened by straw and ash, it becomes part of the warmth. Food smells heavier too. Stews simmer longer. Fat renders slowly. The air holds on to these smells for hours, even days. Meat and root vegetables dominate. Sharp greens are rare. The scent palette narrows. In winter, the house smells thick, layered, and closed. It smells like endurance. Spring loosens everything. As the ground thaws, new smells seep in through the floor and walls. Damp earth awakens, releasing a sweetness mixed with decay. Meltwater finds its way into places it should not, bringing with it the faint odor of rot. The fire burns less, smoke thins. For the first time in months, the house breathes. Doors open more often. Air moves. With it comes the smell of mud on boots, of wet wool hung to dry, of animals shedding winter coats. The house smells unsettled, transitional. Spring is when unpleasant smells are most noticeable. Old straw turned sour, hidden rot revealed, waste that thawed too quickly. But spring also brings relief. Fresh herbs appear. Washed clothing dries faster. The first hints of green cut through the heaviness. The house smells restless, but hopeful. Summer is the most dangerous season for smell. Heat releases everything. Food spoils quickly. Milk turns. Meat must be salted or eaten fast. The house smells sharper, more volatile. Rot becomes a constant threat, announced by scent before it is seen. Bodies sweat more. Washing increases, but water warms and stagnates. Linen dries fast, but carries salt and oil. Wool is worn less, reducing some heaviness, but skin is more exposed to air and sun. Insects arrive. Their presence is smelled before it is noticed. Sweet rot, fermentation, dampness. Smoke is used deliberately now, not just for warmth, but for protection. Fires are kept smouldering to drive flies away. Summer smells loud. The house must be managed constantly. Doors open wide. Windows stay unshuttered. Herbs are scattered more often. The balance is delicate. Autumn is the most forgiving. Cool air returns. Food keeps longer. The fire regains purpose. The house smells rich but controlled. Harvest brings abundance. Grain, apples, dried herbs. The air fills with the smell of storage. Dusty starch, fruit sweetness, crushed leaves. Smoke preserves meat. The scent of curing hangs in the rafters. Autumn smells busy, satisfied. She understands now that smell was not just background. It was calendar, clock, warning, comfort. The people did not need to be told what season it was. Their noses already knew. The same house, unchanged in shape, transformed completely through scent alone. She breathes in and imagines how a person born here would recognize time, not by dates, but by air, by the way the house felt inside the chest. Winter's weight, spring's unease, summer's sharpness, autumn's fullness. Smell carried memory. It anchored people in time. This is why medieval homes smelled the way they did. Not because people lacked knowledge, but because they lived inside systems shaped by climate, necessity, and routine. The house was not meant to be neutral, it was meant to respond. And it did. Not all medieval homes smelled alike, even though they were built from the same elements: wood, earth, fire, bodies. The difference was not cleanliness in the modern sense, but density, distance, and control. She imagines stepping out of the rural cottage and into a town, where houses press against one another like held breath. Here, smell has less space to move. It stacks. In a townhouse, the air is narrower, streets are tight, waste has fewer places to go. The smell of one household does not stop at its own walls. It leaks, blends, intrudes. A family does not only live with its own smells, but with everyone else's. The lower rooms smell of trade. Leather, if the house belongs to a cobbler. Fish, if the market is nearby. Metal and smoke, if a smith works below. These smells climb upward, seeping into living spaces above. Cooking smells are sharper here, more varied. Spices appear more often, but so do spoiled scraps. Fish guts left too long. Ale spilled into floorboards. The smell of waste from shared privies that are emptied irregularly. People wash their hands and faces just as carefully as in the countryside, but the air never fully clears. Smoke hangs between buildings, refuse lingers in corners. Summer heat intensifies everything. A townhome smells busy, crowded, layered with other lives. In contrast, a noble household smells expansive, but not necessarily cleaner. Large halls trap scent rather than releasing it. High ceilings allow smoke to rise, but they also allow it to linger. Tapestries absorb sweat, breath, and soot for years. Rushes on the floor hide refuse beneath softness. The great hall smells of feasting long after the table is cleared. Grease, wine, spilled broth. Dogs add their presence. Horses are never far away. Servants move constantly, carrying scents from kitchens, stables, and privies through the space. Perfumes exist here, but they do not replace the baseline. They float briefly, then sink into wool and stone. A noble smells of perfume and body, of incense and sweat, of rosewater layered over days of wear. Private chambers offer only limited relief. Chamber pots still sit beneath beds. Candles burn tallow as often as wax. Smoke still marks everything. Wealth adds complexity, not purity. Then there are monasteries. Here, smell is managed with intention, not erased, but disciplined. Regular washing of linens, controlled kitchens, separate latrines with running water, herb gardens tended specifically for health and scent. The air smells simpler stone, clean wool, ink, parchment. Smoke is present, but lighter. Food smells are restrained. Bodies are washed more often. Yet even here, humanity persists. Communal sleeping brings breath and sweat together. Kitchens smell of boiled vegetables and fish. Infirmaries smell sharply medicinal vinegar, crushed herbs, poultices. A monastery smells calmer, not empty. She understands now that no medieval home smelled good or bad by universal standard. They smelled appropriate to their purpose. Crowded places smelled intense. Isolated places smelled grounded. Wealth smelled layered. Discipline smelled controlled. But none smelled neutral. Neutrality is a modern fantasy. Smell, in this world, was never meant to disappear. It was meant to be read, and those who lived here read it fluently. She begins to understand that the greatest difference between her own world and this one is not the smell itself, but the way the mind treats it. The human brain does not experience scent objectively. It learns, it filters, it decides what matters and what does not. In a medieval home, the nose is trained from childhood to ignore what is constant and attend only to change. Smoke that is always there becomes silence. Human scent that never leaves becomes background. Animal warmth becomes comfort. What breaks through this calm is not intensity, but difference, a smell that does not belong. She imagines a child born into this house. From the first breath, smoke is normal. Wool is normal. The presence of animals is normal. The smell of waste is normal in its place and time. None of these register as discomfort because they do not signal danger. The child learns early that smell is information, not judgment. Milk souring smells wrong. Meat turning smells wrong. Smoke thickening too quickly smells wrong. Dampness creeping where it should not smells wrong. Illness announces itself through breath and sweat before fever is named. These smells matter, everything else fades. This is why medieval people did not live in constant misery, gagging at their surroundings. Their brains protected them. Adaptation was not optional, it was survival. She notices this adaptation happening within herself. What once stood out now dissolves. Her attention shifts not to what is present, but to what changes. When the air grows too damp, she notices. When the smoke thins, she notices. When the animals stir unusually, she notices. The house teaches the body how to listen. This is why cleanliness in this world is defined differently. It is not the absence of smell, it is the absence of threat. A home that smells strongly but predictably is safe. A home that smells unexpectedly is not. She reflects on how modern minds are trained differently. Today, neutrality is expected. Artificial cleanliness removes scent entirely, creating an environment where even small smells feel intrusive. Here, scent is continuous, and so the mind does not treat it as alarm. The medieval home is not chaotic, it is stable. This stability allows people to rest, to sleep, to think. As days pass in her imagination, she realizes that people would recognize one another by smell as easily as by face. Family members carried the scent of the house with them. Villages had distinct atmospheres. Even regions could be identified by air alone. Smell anchored identity. A stranger smelled wrong before they spoke. She understands now that the medieval home did not merely contain life, it shaped perception itself. The brain adapted not by numbing, but by becoming selective. Only danger pierced the veil. Everything else became comfort. In the medieval world, smell was not only part of daily life, it was a warning, a diagnosis. Sometimes, a prophecy. She realizes that people here did not separate scent from health. To them, air was not neutral. Air could heal, and air could kill. The idea that disease traveled through invisible, living smells was not superstition to them. It was observation. When sickness came, it arrived with odor. When death followed, it announced itself unmistakably. A body beginning to fail changed its smell before anything else was visible. Breath grew sweet or foul. Sweat turned sharp, almost metallic. Skin lost its familiar warmth and took on a damp, sour note. These were signs understood instinctively, long before words like infection or bacteria existed. She imagines the moment a mother leans close to a child and knows, without explanation, that something is wrong, not because of heat alone, not because of crying, but because the child no longer smells like herself. This is why medieval homes paid such close attention to air. Windows were opened not for light, but for breath. Herbs were burned not for beauty, but for protection. Smoke was not only warmth, it was a barrier against invisible danger. When illness entered a house, the smell of the home changed. Sweeter, heavier, wrong. People noticed immediately. They believed that bad air miasma was responsible, and so they fought scent with scent, vinegar-soaked cloths, burning rosemary, juniper, sage, bowls of herbs placed near beds, floors refreshed more often. These actions were not symbolic. They were practical attempts to correct what the nose told them had gone wrong. In times of plague, smell became terror. The air outside towns was said to rot. Streets stank not just of waste, but of death itself. Houses where people died developed a smell others avoided instinctively, a thick, sickly sweetness mixed with decay. Doors were marked, windows sealed. Fires kept burning day and night. People trusted their noses more than their eyes. A house that smelled wrong was avoided. A body that smelled wrong was feared. Even burial practices reflected this obsession. The dead were wrapped quickly, herbs packed around them, earth piled fast, not only for respect, but to contain smell. Smell meant corruption. Corruption meant danger. She understands now that medieval fear of odor was not irrational. In a world without medicine, smell was one of the few early indicators of disaster. This is also why cleanliness rituals intensified during outbreaks, not bathing for comfort, but for survival. Hands washed with vinegar, clothes aired relentlessly, smoke thickened deliberately. A house filled with strong, familiar smells felt safer than one filled with strange, empty air. Silence and neutrality were suspicious. Even churches responded to this fear. Incense was not only sacred, it was medicinal in the medieval mind. It purified air, drove away sickness, and masked the scent of crowded bodies gathering to pray. Hospitals and infirmaries smelled sharp and bitter by design. Vinegar, herbs, boiled linens. These were places where smell was controlled aggressively, because uncontrolled smell meant death. She realizes that smell shaped behavior at every level, from how people arranged furniture, to where they slept, to whom they approached. It shaped fear, it shaped trust, and it shaped memory. A medieval person might forget a face, but they would remember a smell associated with illness or safety for a lifetime. The house itself, then, was a kind of shield. As long as it smelled right, predictable, lived in, warm, it promised continuity. When it did not, people knew to flee. In the medieval world, smell did not belong only to the house. It followed people through the most important moments of their lives. Birth, marriage, and death were not silent events. They announced themselves through scent long before words were spoken. She imagines the moment of birth, a small room warmed beyond comfort. The fire burns steadily, not for cheer, but for necessity. Water is heated, cloth is laid out, the air thickens quickly. Blood has a smell iron and warmth, unmistakable. It cuts through smoke and wool without apology. Sweat joins it, sharp and urgent. The room smells alive in the most literal sense. Herbs are crushed and burned, not for ceremony, but to steady the air. Rosemary, sage, something bitter, something grounding. The scent is meant to calm, to protect, to mark this moment as watched. Birth smells intense because life arrives violently. The smell does not fade quickly. It settles into cloth and straw, reminding the house for days that something irreversible has happened. Marriage smells different, less urgent, more layered. Freshly washed clothing enters the house, carrying outdoor air with it. Hair is brushed and scented lightly. A touch of herb, a dab of oil. Not luxury, but intention. The house smells temporarily brighter. Bread baking, ale brewing, meat roasting. These smells are chosen, prepared, offered. Human scent is still present, but softened by celebration. Smoke becomes welcoming rather than oppressive. Even the animals seem quieter, pushed slightly aside to make room. Marriage smells like abundance and hope, but it is fleeting. By morning, the house returns to itself, and then there is death. Death smells before it speaks. A body cooling changes scent quickly. Warmth leaves. Sweetness creeps in. The air grows heavy in a way that no one mistakes. The house reacts immediately. Windows open regardless of cold. Fires burn hotter. Herbs are burned constantly, not delicately, but aggressively. Juniper, rosemary, vinegar-soaked cloths. The goal is not beauty, it is containment. The dead are washed, not to remove smell entirely, that is impossible, but to slow it, wrapped tightly, packed with herbs, moved quickly. The house must not keep death's scent for long. She understands now why medieval people feared lingering smells more than sudden ones. Lingering meant corruption. Lingering meant danger. Even after the body is gone, the house remembers. For days, sometimes weeks, the room smells wrong. Sweet, flat, unnatural. People sleep elsewhere if they can. Smell marks the boundary between the living and the dead. Over time, with fire and air and routine, the house recovers. Its familiar smell returns. Only then does life feel safe again. Smell does not decorate these moments. It defines them. A medieval person could walk blindfolded into a house and know whether a child had been born, a feast prepared, or a death occurred simply by breathing. These moments taught people that smell carried truth, and because of that, smell became sacred. Certain scents were believed to attract protection, others to invite harm. Garlic warded off sickness and spirits alike. Incense pleased God and purified air. Vinegar chased away death's residue. Even love had a smell-clean skin. Warmed fabric, breath, clothes in shared darkness. The house absorbed all of it. Years later, one scent could bring everything back. A hint of rosemary and smoke might recall a birth long past. A sweet, wrong heaviness might summon grief without warning. Memory lived in the nose. She realizes now that medieval homes were not just places where people lived, they were archives. Every smell layered over the last, storing moments invisibly in wood, straw, and cloth. And those who lived there learned to read them instinctively, without language. In a medieval home, smell was never only physical, it carried intention. She notices this first in the quiet corners of the house, places no one sits and no one sleeps. Corners near doorframes, the space behind the hearth, the shadowed area beneath the rafters. These places are treated differently, even if no one ever explains why. Here, Herbs are burned deliberately, not for warmth, not for food, but for protection. When rosemary, juniper, or sage is placed on the embers, the smell changes instantly. It cuts through the familiar smoke with something sharper, cleaner, almost defiant. The air feels more alert, as if the house itself is paying attention. People believe that certain smells draw lines. A threshold is not just wood, it is a boundary. Smoke drifting across it seals the house against what should not enter. A bundle of dried herbs hung near the door is not decoration. It is a warning. She understands that this belief is not born from fantasy alone. It comes from observation. Bad things often arrive with unfamiliar smells. Illness, strangers, decay, so familiar. Strong scent becomes safety. Garlic is especially trusted. Its sharpness is unmistakable, and it clings stubbornly to air and skin. When hung in a home, it announces that this space is claimed. Its smell lingers even when unseen, creating an invisible presence. Smoke itself is thought to confuse harmful forces. It moves unpredictably. It fills space without form. If something unseen were to enter, the smoke would touch it first. This is why fires are rarely allowed to die completely. Even at night, embers remain alive, not only for warmth, but so the house is never fully unguarded. The smell of burnt herbs is strongest during moments of uncertainty, storms, illness, unexplained fear. When something feels wrong but cannot be named, people respond with scent. She notices that these practices calm the living as much as they are meant to repel the unseen. The smell reassures the mind. It signals action, control, intention. A protected house smells intentional, not pleasant, not neutral, but purposeful. The air tells its occupants, you are not alone, but you are not defenseless either. And slowly, the smoke fades back into the background, leaving only the sense that the house has been attended to. Leaving home in the medieval world was not marked by distance. It was marked by smell. The moment she steps beyond the doorway, the air changes in a way the body understands immediately. The familiar weight of the house, smoke, wool, bodies, animals falls away. In its place comes something thinner, sharper, and far less forgiving. The road smells uncertain. Dust rises with every step, dry and bitter. It clings to the throat. When rain falls, that dust turns to mud, releasing the sour, mineral scent of churned earth, mixed with animal droppings from countless passers-by. The ground smells tired, used, pressed down by hooves and wheels. Travellers smell different from one another, and none of them smell safe. Clothing carries the odour of long wear, damp cloaks dried too slowly, sweat that has nowhere to settle. Packs smell of leather and old food. Bread carried too long begins to smell faintly sour. Meat, if present, is heavily salted and sharp. Animals dominate the air on the road. Horses sweat thickly under loads, releasing a pungent, oily scent. Donkeys and mules smell sharper, more acrid. Herd animals leave behind a trail of manure that marks the path long after they have passed. At night, the smell grows heavier. Roadside shelters and inns trap the odours of many strangers in a single space. The air inside is crowded with unfamiliar breath, damp wool, old smoke, spilled ale, and fear that has no place to go. Here, smell does not comfort. It warns. She notices how people instinctively claim small spaces by scent. A traveler sits near the fire not only for warmth, but to absorb smoke into their clothing, masking the smell of the road. Smoke makes a person less strange, less exposed. In shared sleeping spaces, people turn away from unfamiliar smells. They learn quickly which scents belong to danger, illness, decay, desperation, and which simply belong to fatigue. The road teaches the nose to be cautious. When she finally returns home, the change is immediate and profound. Before the house is even seen, it is smelled. The familiar smoke reaches her first, soft and heavy. The wool and earth scent follows. The subtle animal warmth beneath it all. Her body relaxes before her mind does. The smell of home is not just comfort, it is recognition. Inside, everything smells predictable. Even the unpleasant notes, the chamber pot, the old straw, the stale corners, are known quantities. They do not surprise. They do not demand vigilance. She realizes that for medieval people, travel was exhausting, not only because of distance or danger, but because it stripped them of their sensory anchor. The smell of home was identity. To leave it was to become unmoored. To return was to be restored. And so, the house welcomed its people back, not with words, but with air that said, "You belong here." There are homes where smell is managed, and then there are homes where smell takes control. She understands the difference the moment she crosses the threshold. Here, the air feels abandoned. The fire is weak or absent, not banked carefully, not watched. Ash is scarce. Smoke does not linger because there is little to produce it. The house smells cold, even when the weather is not. Cold has a smell of its own. It sharpens everything. In these homes, dampness dominates. Moisture seeps into walls and floors without resistance. Straw is old, broken down beyond usefulness. It smells sour, not softly earthy but aggressively fermented, as if it has given up pretending to be bedding at all. There are no herbs crushed into the floor, no smoke to reset the air, no vinegar, no ash, no rhythm. The smell here is not layered, it is flat. Flat smell means neglect. Food odors linger too long because there is no replacement. A single spoiled item can dominate the space for days. Bread smells of mold before it is visibly green. Milk sours into something sharp and unavoidable. The air becomes accusatory. Bodies smell different here too, not stronger, stagnant. Clothing is not aired often. Wool never fully dries. Skin carries the same odor day after day, not because of dirt, but because nothing interrupts it. Washing happens rarely, not from ignorance, but from exhaustion. Even animals smell different. In homes of absolute poverty, animals are not companions or sources of warmth. They are burdens that cannot be separated. Their waste accumulates, without enough straw to absorb it. The sharpness of ammonia hangs in the air longer than it should. The house smells crowded, but empty at the same time. This is the smell people avoid instinctively. Not because it offends, but because it signals danger. Illness thrives here. Lice and fleas announce themselves early, not by sight, but by scent. The musty odor of irritated skin, the damp animal note of infestation. These smells cling to fabric, to hair, to breath. Neighbors notice. They do not comment. Smell travels farther than sight, and it carries judgment silently. She realizes that poverty was not only seen in medieval life, it was smelled. Long before hunger was confessed, before illness was visible, The air told the story. A house like this does not smell lived in. It smells overwhelmed. There is no balance, no cycle of refreshment, no seasonal rhythm. The smell does not change because nothing changes. This is why medieval communities responded to smell with distance. Charity existed, but fear existed too. A house that smelled wrong was a warning not just of need, but of contagion. Smell became a boundary between survival and collapse. And those who lived here knew it. They smelled their own decline before anyone else did. The first sign is never movement. It is never a sound. It is smell. She learns this slowly, by noticing what makes people pause without speaking. A moment when someone stops sweeping. When a bowl is set down and not picked up again. When a glance moves toward a dark corner without explanation. The smell arrives before the creatures do. At first, it is faint. Almost nothing. A dry, bitter note near the wall where grain is stored. A whisper of ammonia, sharp but thin, like a breath held too long. It does not dominate the room. It hides. This is how vermin announce themselves. Rats and mice leave scent behind constantly. Their urine marks paths invisible to the eye, but loud to the nose. In a medieval home, these smells are learned early. People know the difference between old wood, damp earth, and rodent presence. The smell of mice is dusty and sour at the same time. It clings low, near floors and corners. It gathers where warmth and food meet. Once noticed, it cannot be unseen or unsmelled. She watches as the family responds without panic. Grain sacks are lifted. Baskets are checked. The cat is watched more closely. No one says rats, but the house knows. Fleas arrive differently. Their smell is not the insect itself, but the body's response. Skin begins to smell irritated. Bedding develops a musty, animal note that does not belong to straw alone. There is a faint sourness to wool that has been slept in too long. Scratching increases. Restlessness follows. People wash bedding not because it looks dirty, but because it smells wrong. Lice announce themselves even more subtly. Hair loses its neutral scent and takes on a damp, human sharpness that lingers close to the scalp. Clothing worn near the neck smells heavier, almost oily. These smells carry shame, but also urgency. She understands that vermin are not merely pests. They are messengers. They signal imbalance. Too much damp, too little smoke, too little ash, too much crowding. The house has slipped. People respond with smell-based solutions. More smoke, more fire. Bedding aired aggressively. Herbs crushed into sleeping spaces. Vinegar added to wash water. Animals repositioned. The goal is not extermination. It is discouragement. The medieval home does not seek to eliminate vermin completely. That is impossible. It seeks to push them back into invisibility. A house that smells strongly of smoke and herbs is less welcoming to small bodies. This is why fire is kept alive even when warmth is not strictly needed. This is why corners are smoked deliberately. This is why certain herbs are preferred not for fragrance, but for hostility. Vermin understand smell too. She notices how fear moves through the house when vermin smells grow stronger. Not dramatic fear, calculated fear. The kind that tightens routine, because vermin do not come alone. They bring loss of food, loss of sleep, illness, and people know this before a single bite is seen. The nose protects the household. This is why a medieval home that suddenly smells empty can be dangerous. No smoke, No human layering, no animal warmth. Vermin move in quickly. Silence and neutrality invite invasion. Smell repels it. The house must constantly assert itself, and so smell becomes a line of defense, quiet, constant, and deeply respected. In medieval towns, smell did not belong only to private life. It was public. Air moved freely between houses, streets, workshops, and markets. When something smelled wrong, it did not stop at a doorway. It spread. And because it spread, it became a matter of order. She walks through a narrow street where homes rise close together, their upper floors almost touching. Here, smells stack vertically. What happens on the ground floor reaches every level above it. Certain trades are known by scent long before they are seen. A tanner's workshop announces itself with a harsh, unmistakable stench, rotting hides, urine, lime. The smell lingers in the street even after the door is closed. People pass quickly, breathing shallowly. But tolerance has limits. When smells grow too strong, when they linger too long, they are no longer private inconvenience. They are accused of corrupting the air itself. Medieval law does not speak of pollution as modern law does, but it understands fouling. Bad air is believed to sicken bodies, weaken communities, invite disease. A foul-smelling trade in the wrong place threatens everyone nearby. So rules emerge. Certain crafts are pushed to the edges of town. Butchers are required to dispose of waste quickly. Fishmongers must clean their stalls before nightfall. Tanneries are fined or relocated, not because the smell offends taste, but because it threatens health. She notices that complaints about smell are often framed carefully. People do not say, "I dislike this." They say, "This air is harmful." Smell becomes evidence. Neighbors testify not with sight, but with breath. They describe how the odor enters their homes, settles into bedding, makes sleep difficult, makes food spoil faster. Smell crosses walls. The law follows. Even households can be accused. A family that neglects waste, that lets refuse accumulate, that allows stagnant filth to rot indoors, may be warned. Not out of cruelty, but fear. Fear of contagion. Fear of decay spreading unseen. She understands now that medieval cities were fragile systems. Fire, disease, famine, everything travelled fast. Smell was one of the earliest signs that balance was failing, so it was watched. Night inspections were sometimes carried out. Officials walked streets, not only to look, but to smell. An unusual odour could signal hidden dumping, illegal slaughter, or sickness concealed indoors. Smell became a language of governance. Those who could control their odours appeared orderly, respectable, safe. Those who could not were suspected, watched, corrected, or removed. She realizes that this is where smell becomes moralized. Not good or bad in itself, but disciplined or undisciplined. A well-managed household smelled predictable. A dangerous one did not. Law entered the nose before it entered the courtroom. Sacred spaces in the medieval world did not feel holy because they looked different. They felt holy because they smelled different. The change was immediate. The moment she steps from the street into a church, the air shifts in a way that quiets the body. The smells of life, sweat, animals, cooking, waste fall away. In their place comes something restrained, deliberate, almost empty. Stone smells cold. It does not carry warmth or memory the way wood does. It holds air without absorbing it. The smell of a church is therefore thinner, cleaner, not because it is pure, but because it refuses to hold what passes through it. Incense defines the space. It does not mask scent the way herbs do in a home. It replaces it. Frankincense and myrrh rise slowly, deliberately, filling the vertical space. The smoke moves upward, not outward. It does not linger low near bodies. It pulls attention away from the floor, away from flesh. The scent teaches posture. People stand straighter. They lower their voices. Breath slows. Wax contributes its own quiet presence. Candle smoke is softer than hearth smoke, less aggressive. Beeswax smells faintly sweet and warm, while tallow carries a heavier, animal note. Both remind the nose that this light is temporary, fragile. Bodies smell different here too, not because they are cleaner, but because they are still. Sweat does not rise quickly. Breath remains shallow. Movement is minimal. The collective human scent is diluted by height and stone. She realizes that sacred spaces are designed to reduce sensory noise. Smell is disciplined, not eliminated. Monasteries take this further. Daily routines include washing not for vanity, but for separation. Clean linen smells of water and air. Herb gardens are tended carefully, not for pleasure, but for order. Kitchens smell simple boiled vegetables, bread, fish, never excessive. Infirmaries smell sharp by intention. Vinegar, crushed herbs, boiled cloth. These smells mark a place where the body is acknowledged, but controlled. The sacred space does not deny the body, it distances it. This is why returning home from church feels overwhelming to the nose. The familiar smells rush back: smoke, wool, animals, food. Life reclaims the senses immediately. The contrast is the point. Sacred smell teaches absence. It teaches restraint. It teaches that holiness is not found in abundance, but in removal. She understands now that medieval people did not need sermons to feel the difference between the sacred and the ordinary. Their noses already knew. In the medieval world, memory did not live primarily in words. It lived in the senses, and among them, smell was the most faithful. She realizes this not through theory, but through experience. A single familiar scent, encountered unexpectedly, can carry a person backward through time, faster than thought ever could. The smell of old smoke trapped in wool does not belong to one moment. It belongs to every night spent near the hearth, every winter endured, every meal shared in silence. When that smell appears again on a traveller's cloak, in another house, drifting from a stranger, it does not introduce itself. It returns. The body recognizes it before the mind does. In a world without written records for most people, without portraits, without photographs, smell becomes the archive of life. Houses remember people long after they are gone, not in shape or sound, but in air. A corner of a room may still carry the faintest trace of someone who used to sleep there. A blanket remembers a child who outgrew it. A table holds the ghost of countless meals. She understands now why moving away from home was so difficult for medieval people. It was not just the loss of place, but the loss of sensory continuity. New houses smelled wrong, at first, not dangerous, but unfamiliar. They lacked history. Only time could teach them to remember. Smell also preserved grief. A room where someone died could summon that loss again years later, with no warning. A sweetness in the air, a heaviness that did not belong. People avoided such spaces not because they were haunted, but because memory lived there too strongly. Joy worked the same way. The smell of baking bread might recall a wedding feast long past. The sharpness of crushed herbs might return someone to a birth. A sickness survived, a night of fear that ended safely. These memories were not chosen, they arrived uninvited. She realizes that medieval people lived in a world where the past was always close, not because they dwelled on it, but because their environment carried it for them. Wood, cloth, straw, and stone absorbed experience and released it slowly over years. This is why houses mattered so deeply. A home was not just shelter, it was a container for memory. Leaving it behind meant abandoning not just walls, but a personal history stored invisibly in air. And this is why medieval homes smelled the way they did. Not because people failed to clean, not because they did not know better, but because smell was how life marked itself. Every scent was a record. Every record was proof of having lived. She breathes in one last time, and the house offers nothing new, only what it has always offered. Familiarity, continuity, presence. And in that presence, the medieval world endures not on the page, not in stone, but quietly in the air. As the night deepens, the house no longer tries to explain itself. It simply remains. The fire has settled into quiet embers, breathing softly, releasing only the faintest trace of smoke into the darkened air. The walls hold their warmth. The floor remembers every step taken across it. Nothing is new now, and nothing needs to be. The smells that once stood out have returned to where they belong, into the background of familiarity. Smoke, wool, earth, bodies, and time itself blend into a single, steady presence. The house feels complete, not because it is clean, but because it is known. Outside, the world continues unseen. Inside, everything necessary is already here. This is how medieval homes endured, not by resisting life, but by absorbing it slowly, layer by layer, breath by breath. The air holds what mattered and lets the rest fade. If you are listening from far away, carrying the weight of another place and another time, you may notice how gently the mind settles when surrounded by something familiar, even if it belongs to a different world. The past does not demand attention, it only waits to be felt. And so, as the house grows quieter and the night stretches on without urgency, you can let the final traces of smoke and warmth drift through your thoughts, unhurried, unjudged. Wherever you are, whatever hour surrounds you now, this medieval home remains still breathing, still remembering long after the fire has dimmed and the door has closed, and the air holds its silence.